Chapter 14. Satan went inside of Judas. Having put in the thought to sell Jesus. It says in John 13:2, the devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. The devil controls thought, and thought controls the heart. And the heart, which is God's land, gets snatched away. For the Spirit of truth to make the heart strong and guide thought, God's truth must go inside of the heart. God must be the head of thought. But for Judas, Satan became the head of thought. So even his heart became snatched away. Yet from inside God's plan, Judas is needed. While God's work is being done, Satan is also needed. By Satan being there, the faiths of God's children become stronger. From God's point of view, Judas is a person already prepared to be used for God's glory. For God's sake, Judas was trampled on by all the Christians. But if Judas were not there, one part of God's plan could not become fulfilled. To trample on Judas would be to trample on one part of God's plan. We had thus far trampled on it without knowing. When it becomes time, God will brightly reveal this truth. The devil went inside of Judas and put in the thought to betray Jesus, and Judas was used for such work. Jesus came to this earth for the work of heaven, and Judas was used together with this work as well. Satan went inside Judas Iscariot. In Eden, God told Adam not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Eve was deluded by the serpent's words, and even Adam disobeyed God's word. To deal with the sin from human disobedience in Eden, God sent Jesus to this earth. Jesus came to carry the sin of humankind. Sin is something that came out of Satan, so the master of sin is Satan. The image of Jesus, who carried that sin, is the image of the sinner. Thus Satan went inside Judas Iscariot and took hold of Jesus. That Satan sold Jesus by entering the thought of Judas is work also fulfilled from inside God's plan. That Satan sold Jesus by entering Judas's thought, as revealed in John 13:2, is work also fulfilled from inside God's plan. If it's not part of God's plan, humans cannot do what they want. Having received the piece of bread and going out, it was night. It says in John 13:30, so, after receiving the piece of bread, he immediately went out, and it was night. After Jesus and his disciples kept the Passover, Judas went out, and it was night. The ministry of Jesus, who came to this earth as flesh, had ended. Only the work of bearing the cross remained. If Jesus bears the cross, the law brings down the curtain. The law is the light of Israel until Jesus comes. By Jesus coming, the law is the light of Israel until Jesus comes. By Jesus coming, the law became night. The law must become night for the light of Jesus to be revealed. Jesus is light, and he waits for it to become night. By Jesus fulfilling the completion of the law, the person who did not receive the Messiah became night. For the person who received Jesus, the law changed to light. And for the person who did not receive Jesus, the law became night. Night is darkness where there is no light. Night is darkness where there is no light. Before Judas received the piece of bread, the law was light. But after receiving the piece of bread, it became night. One era had passed. One era passed, and darkness had come. When darkness comes, light comes again. What you do, do quickly. That Judas received Jesus' command, do quickly what you are going to do, was Judas receiving God's word. It is a covenant. Jesus and Judas are sinking time, and now that it has become time, Jesus tells Judas to do his work quickly. Thus, Jesus as well as Judas already knew the plan. That Judas and Jesus put their hands into the bowl in Matthew 26:23 spiritually refers to them working together. The disciples didn't know, but Judas didn't work while not knowing. When Jesus said to Judas, "Let me use you," would Judas not have responded by saying, "I will do it," and make a promise? Judas would have known that if he did this work, he would be trampled on. While he knew that if he did this work, he would be at a loss and things would be difficult for him, he gave himself up for God's glory. That he gave himself up as a person who sacrifices was him abandoning his life for God. But the heart of Judas was not that of a human's. It was the divinity of God, a heart that was brought down by the head of creation. It was a heart that was stirred. Judas was shunned as a person who betrayed Jesus. But if he didn't do quickly what he does, and Jesus weren't betrayed, then God's plan to save humankind cannot be fulfilled. So no matter how a person is used, the person who moves in the midst of God's plan is used as God's righteousness, which fulfills God's will, no matter how much the other humans might throw rocks at that person. Satan's work ends. Matthew 26:15 says, "What will you give me if I betray him to you?" They paid him 30 pieces of silver. Judas took the 30 pieces of silver that came from the temple treasury and betrayed Jesus. The work of Judas and Satan was up until this time. Satan's work was up until the time of making Judas receive the 30 pieces of silver. All work was fulfilled according to God's plan. But the human heart of Judas returned to him, and he realized that he did something he shouldn't have done. Although Judas worked according to the covenant, which was to betray Jesus, Judas became regretful, having actually seen Jesus being condemned, and gave the 30 pieces of silver back to the chief priest. Judas told them that he sold innocent blood, that he committed a crime, and that he didn't want to sell Jesus, but they refused. So he threw the 30 pieces of silver at the temple and left, and he hanged himself and died. Satan had entered Judas's thought, and the work of being used as Satan's servant came to an end. If Satan seizes the human, Satan controls that person until Satan's work comes to an end. This is because Satan is a spirit that God also manages. Judas inside me must be offered up to God. As a person entrusted with the money box, Judas was a thief who stole what was inside of it. Spiritually, the money box is not an offering collection, but refers to Jesus. That Judas was entrusted with the money box means Judas was entrusted with Jesus. So Judas is someone who steals Jesus, that is, the life of God. Because Judas was entrusted with Jesus, who came for the resurrection of this earth, Judas was entrusted with the earth. Mary broke the perfume jar, and this was her throwing it away for heaven. But Judas said, how could she possibly throw away such an expensive perfume that must be used for this earth? Jesus came for the sake of the earth and tries to pull the earth up to heaven. But Judas tries until the end to fasten the things of the earth onto the earth. Like this, the lustful person blocks resurrection. Judas inside me, that is, the lustful person, tries to do the work of the earth. Because resurrection is something that goes up to God, the lustful person does not like resurrection. The lustful person bites onto the ankle of the one who tries to go up to heaven and tries until the end to drag one down onto the earth. This is Judas inside of me. Now, Judas inside of me must be offered up to God. When Judas changes into the things of heaven, the life within me resurrects from inside of God.